Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Angelica Young, if you're new here. So today, I'm doing a 2024 wrap-up video. And I found this post online, and I just found it literally a few minutes ago. And I want to go through it and just talk about books with y'all before we wrap up 2024. This year's been amazing in reading. I've read the most this year because I had the most time away from school. But right now, of course, I'm in school, but before that, in the break, I had a lot of time to read and catch up on books. And I also we also had readings for class, so that also contributes to my reading list. Not a lot of classics that I already read before, but it was interesting getting perspectives from a lot of people. Yeah, so reading it from my cell phone over here, and I got it from this bookstagram account called Traveling Through Pages. So yeah, let's get into the video. Books I gave 5 stars. Okay, that's a good question. I gave a lot of books 5 stars, and I feel like those were my books of the year. When I was doing my birthday wrap-up, I listed a lot of books, and I feel like those were the books that I gave 5 stars. So the first book, obviously, is The Secret History by Donna Tartt, one of my favorite books ever. The second book is Babel by R.F. Kuang, also one of my favorite books. Babel is just amazing, very poetic. I love R.F. Kuang, and I not only love her because of Babel. That's the only book I've read by her, but I just like how she morphs through different genres. I know that she's written The Poppy War. That is a fantasy book. Babel is a dark academia book. Yellowface is a completely realistic contemporary book. So I just admire how she morphs through different genres, and I was trying to also embody that when I was writing my portfolio, and I hope I did a good job. Yeah, but I just love how she does that. My least favorite or disappointing books, there's this one book called Diary of an Oxygen Thief, if I'm not wrong. I just didn't enjoy it. The opening line was so amazing, it was so fascinating, and it had a lot of potential, but every single time I just read the book, I just continued reading it. I just didn't find it palatable to read, it was just not amazing, it was just not a good book, and I feel like it tries to capture what Lolita is, but it's very, very disturbing. And yeah, I just realized that I haven't finished listing my 5-star reads, and I talked about The Secret History, Babel by R.F. Kuang, and then we have Beloved by Toni Morrison. I loved this specific scene in Beloved by Toni Morrison, where it is Beloved's POV, and of course, because we know that Beloved is a child, the way Morrison wrote her, the lack of punctuation is just very, very, fast-paced, and it was just haunting. And I was listening to the audiobook, and Toni Morrison herself reads the book, and it was just so beautiful, just amazing. And yeah, I just love how she wrote that perspective of Beloved, the way she describes how Beloved loves the teeth of her father. It was just so hauntingly amazing, beautifully grotesque, and I love that. Apart from Beloved, Babel, and The Secret History, I have 1984 by George Orwell. I was actually having a conversation today with someone I was filming a podcast with, and just interesting how Orwell in 1984 in Animal Farm too, he has a good way of capturing one's sense of memory and how memory is skewed. Memory is not very, very clear, vivid in the future. When I try to remember something in the past right now, I can't quite grasp it so well, and Orwell does a good job in just embodying how someone fails to recollect things based off of the facts that are presented to him by the government. And it's just very fascinating how it was the government he's in a toxic relationship with the government, and he can't quite make out what is happening. So that was very, very interesting. And another interesting book I read this year was Things Fall Apart. I reread this book actually. The first time I read Things Fall Apart was in 2019 for my English class. We were reading it in class, At that time, I hadn't quite deciphered what the book was, what it was all about. I guess I don't think I was too young. I just didn't concentrate a lot in English class in 2019. But rereading it, just amazing, getting this objective perspective of the representation of the Igbo culture before colonialism and after colonialism. And also Toni Morrison talks about this in one of her interviews, how like Chinua Achebe just went for it, he doesn't cater to try to explain himself to any foreign audience. And it was just a beautiful thing, and I try also to embody that in my writing,
As though our lives had no meaning and no depth without the white gaze. And I spent my entire writing life trying to make sure that the white gaze was not the dominant one in any of my books. And the people who helped me most arrive at that kind of language were African writers. Chinua Achebe, Bessie Head. Those writers who could assume the centrality of their race because they were Africans. And they didn't explain anything to white people. Those questions were incomprehensible to them. Those questions that I would have as a minority living in an all-white country like the United States. But when I read the poetry of César, or the poetry of Senghor, or the novels particularly, Things Fall Apart was more important to me than anything. Only because there was a language, there was a posture, there were the parameters. I could step in now, and I didn't have to be consumed by or be concerned by the white gaze. That was the liberation for me. It has nothing to do with who reads the books. Everyone of any race, any gender, any country. But my sovereignty and my authority as a racialized person had to be struck immediately with the very first book.
That's the same thing that is in Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. She literally writes some of the parts of the book in French, and she doesn't try to translate it to us or to make us understand what the French is about, or in the Secret History, because some parts of it, it's written in Latin, I think, or Greek. I think it's Latin. And Donna Tartt does not shy away from trying to explain it to us, but she trusts us as the audience to just go away and research it if you're interested in that. But trying to break the fourth wall and explaining it to the reader, sometimes it ruins the flow of the narrative, and it destroys the sort of relationship we have with the writer, because it's like the writer doesn't trust us enough to enjoy the work without explaining themselves to us. So I just like it how authors embody that to the fullest potential, and just go with it and don't shy away from explaining it to us, and just say objective truth or add different elements of culture into the work, and just trust that we will, if we're passionate enough, go out and look for it ourselves. That's the beauty in writing. Yeah, and those were my best books this year. I don't know if there are other books that have bettered these, because this was so good. Obviously this is just amazing staples in any literary canon, and just feel like for Babel, because it's a recent book, it will just be an amazing classic in the future. I was also listening to the audiobook of Babel by Arif Kwang, the original audiobook, and it's just listening to an audiobook of the book is just a different dimension, because the way it's dramatized, the way it's said out loud, it's just fascinating. Yeah. So I've answered the second question, which is least favorite or disappointing books. That and The Aeneid by Virgil, which is over here. I read that for my literature humanities class. Virgil, oh my days. I don't want to rant or trash talk about Virgil. I think The Aeneid has amazing writing, but I feel like the plot was just an attempt to rewrite the Iliad and the Odyssey and just make that into a single book. And I don't know if there was plagiarism at that time, but yeah, that's all I can say. Didn't really fascinate me, the plot. I feel like it was not original. That's the thing. My favorite authors, of course, my favorite author is Donna Tartt, Chinua Achebe, George Orwell, R.F. Kuang, Toni Morrison, James Baldwin. I'm getting into my James Baldwin phase, and I love how he speaks. I love his conversations on YouTube, and I just love how, what he says. Just fascinating, and I just want to read more of him. I've read Giovanni's Room. I actually have the book over there. It's one of my friends who lent me the book. It's just amazing, the book Giovanni's Room, and I'm planning to listen to the audiobook of another one of his shorter works in the future. But yeah, okay, series I finished a lot of series this year, again because I had a lot of time. I'm not a very binge watching type of person because it will have damage to my eyes, and I don't want to damage my eyes. But I finished Breaking Bad. Amazing cinematography. Breaking Bad has the most amazing, thrilling cinematography. There are just some scenes that were wow, this was very thoughtful, the way they were brought out, and I love that. The script of Breaking Bad is just amazingly fascinating. There was a lot of Easter eggs placed throughout the narrative, and a lot of loose ends were tied, and I really, really appreciated that, just tying the loose ends, bringing back some things that were present in a previous episode and just tying it in the final episode. In the first scene, we see Walter White's pants just dropping off of the sky, and you may wonder, where did the pants go? We didn't go back to that, but in the last episodes, they brought back the pants, and Walter White is rolling this wheel, and he looks at the side, and we see his pants over there. And I feel that shows how Walter White has changed over the years. There was this scene on The Kid, Walter White Jr., I don't remember his name, but Walter White's son was complaining about the cereal that they've been eating, and later on we see that they've changed the cereal, and just amazing. The attention to detail was what fascinated me most about Breaking Bad. And another series I finished La Casa de Papel. I was I finished watching La Casa de Papel, then I got into Breaking Bad. My friend was you loved Money Heist? Watch Breaking Bad. It is a thrilling series, I'm not gonna lie. It's just amazing. It grips you throughout. That's why it's one of the best series ever filmed. But if I were to choose between Breaking Bad and La Casa de Papel, I'll definitely choose Breaking Bad because of the attention to detail, because of the cinematography that was in there. Plot wise, I feel La Casa de Papel was better, but in terms of the cinematography, the attention to detail, which I really love in films and writing, I will definitely go with Breaking Bad. Best 2024 releases. I don't think I've read a book that has been released in 2024, honestly, if I'm to be quite honest. The most recent book I read, I guess, is Babel by R.F. Kuang. I think it was released in 2021. I don't think I've read a book that was released in 2024, so yeah. Books I did not finish. Diary of an Oxygen Thief. I have a lot of books actually that I didn't finish, I'm not gonna lie. If we're talking about reading them in the physical sense, I didn't finish Homer's The Iliad in the physical sense. I just listened to the audiobook before, and for class I just didn't read the entirety of the book. I didn't finish John Steinbeck's East of Eden. I was listening to the audiobook a while back, and I was listening to the audiobook while I was doing my twists, and I was done doing my twist and I didn't finish the book, and that was just it. I just didn't go back to it. I'm planning to go back to it. But so far I've read 3 John Steinbeck books, and my best book by John Steinbeck is The Pearl. That's my all-time favorite. I love The Pearl by John Steinbeck. I've read it I listened to it, the audiobook, last week while I was writing my own work, just to get into that John Steinbeck, flowy prose, flow type of phase, and I just love The Pearl by John Steinbeck. And then we have Of Mice and Men. It was interesting. People say it's a sad book. It was sad, but it wasn't the saddest book, We Have a Little Life. It's a very sad book. Yeah. So I didn't really vibe with Of Mice and Men. I used to read it, and as far as I reached, it's a very slow-paced book. It's a book that goes through innumerable generations of the family that is presented. So it's a slow read. It has a feel that is similar to Stoner by John Williams. So yeah, I don't think it will top The Pearl by John Steinbeck. I just feel like The Pearl it's an amazing John Steinbeck book, my favorite. Best sequels. I'm not the best. I don't read a lot of books that are in series form. When we talk about books like Harry Potter, for example, like I just don't know how to follow up on like different sequels of books, and that's that was very, very much seen when I read The Atlas Six, and I was like, oh wait, they're leaving us in a cliffhanger, so they want us to buy the other books, and I was like, okay, I'm not doing this. We just had to have one book. So yeah, I just like standalone novels. It's like actually pretty paradoxical because I'm planning to write a series of books, so it's not hypocritical of me. Though like the book I'm writing is a child's book, so yeah, it's like Diary of a Wimpy Kid. It's not like The Atlas Six, which is like a long read. But yeah, new genre explored. Okay, new genre explored. That is a good thing. It's a good question. I explored real non-fiction books. That's the word. I explored non-fiction. I was the hugest proponent against reading non-fiction books because I just felt like there's this war of like which books are better, non-fiction or fiction, and I'm always on the fiction train. Like I will die on the fiction train. I believe that fiction does a good job in mirroring what is going on in society. For example, in 1984 by George Orwell, or in The Pearl by John Steinbeck, or in Beloved by Toni Morrison. Things fall apart, and I have always like loved fiction because it just does a better job in bringing to life an issue that happens in society. That said, I got into a lot of like non-fiction this year, reading a lot of articles, of course, for class. There was this article that I was supposed to make a lit review on, and it was on semantic mistakes that people make. And if you make a semantic mistake in the word, it's easier for you to recall. I hope that's the correct study. I didn't quite enjoy that study. And we also had another study on Botox, so that was interesting. But I read Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, which is by Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's an amazing book. I just loved reading it. I'm not done with it yet, but yeah, it was a very interesting book. Does the Bible qualify to be a new genre? I mean, I read the Bible this year in a literary sense. I used to read it in like, the church setting, but this year it was a literary book that was supposed to make a literary analysis of it. I actually made an argument comparing God and Odysseus, so that was an interesting thing to do. So yeah,